Welcome to Black Diesel Garage. I'm Gabe, and in this video we're going to add some fuel necks and a dual fender on White Lightning, our 96 Ford F350 4x4 dually crew cab 7.3 IDI truck. So we're going to try to add a fender to here to cover up the rest of the tire and two fuel necks for both fuel tanks. So what we're going to try to do here in this video. So the plan here is to take these trailer fenders and mock them up in here and weld them in place and fill whatever gaps around them. And for the filler necks, could use the original ones. That'd make me have to cut a pretty big hole into the bed, and they won't reach how they are. I'd have to add some more hose. But I think what I want to do is I bought some 2-inch pipe with 2-inch caps, and that's the same size as just the hose here for the filler neck. So I want to cut a square in here and have it coming up at an angle, but basically have this in there as my filler neck. And how I plan on doing that is I plan on cutting this at a 45 and popping it in there at an angle to where this is the bottom and attaching a top piece on it. But basically this piece, what's left in there, taking that with the top and welding it right in the side here with the filler neck on it. So that's what we're going to try to accomplish right here. So I'm going to go ahead, mark this out at a 45 and cut it, and then mark off another one to cut off for both the filler necks. So without further ado, let's get started on that. And I'm just gonna say this because it came to my mind while I was doing this, but it's happened to me in the past, and I've seen where people have commented on other people's videos about this. But I could have just took a square and buttoned a square up to here and marked what I wanted, which I do own a square, I just couldn't find it. This is just another way to get the job done. And along with doing cuts on pipes and all sorts of things, some people have specialty tools for it and some people don't. And then there's people that just complain if you don't have the correct tools, which I don't think it really matters if you have the correct tool or not. All that matters is the end product. If you get there with a good quality end product, what does it really matter? Like in a sense, in another analogy, I actually do not own any line wrenches personally. And every once in a while you do have to have a line wrench. You have that one that'll round off. But most of the time, you don't have to have a line wrench. So, say I have a line to take off and I use my normal box end wrench, the end product's still the same. It's only the fact that I didn't spend extra money on a line wrench. If you can get a job done with the simpler tools, without the specialty tool for the job, as long as you come out with a good end product, there's nothing wrong with it. So, yeah, me marking like this and stuff is probably a little odd and a little inefficient, but I just couldn't find my square, and really, what's wrong with it? If we're going to have the same end product, it doesn't matter. Well, I got one of them cut out here. And to give you a better idea on things, this pipe, I'm actually probably going to chop it and do a 45 with it, just to get a better angle underneath the bed. But this here, this piece I cut out of the end, still a little warm, is going to be inside the bed like this. So I'm going to cut a square hole, stick it there, weld it in, and then right here, I'm probably going to torch a hole, and this pipe will be going through here, and this cap will be over the pipe. So basically this will be recessed in the side of the bed, but at an angle like this. But yet it will be recessed to inside the bed by this piece of pipe here, is the idea. So I'm gonna cut this other one out. Well, those are not the best welds I've done, but nonetheless, they are welds. So there's those. Just got to get them popped up in here and welded in. Now, I do not know yet whether I want to weld these in here and then cut the hole, or cut the hole somewhere else. I think I'm probably fine to weld them in and then cut the hole, but we'll see. All right, so these will be tucked up in there a little more. But I kind of like that. Technically, it'll be up like that. Almost sits flush, not quite. But I kind of like the looks of that. Well, now I think I'm gonna firmly tack them in, but not weld them yet. And I'll probably take this pipe, figure out where I want to 45 into it so I can bend it at a 90 almost. So it can stick in there and go 90'd. So I'll probably do that next. So another thing I gotta do is this slipped on the chains and bent right here. The other side's even worse. So I have to bend that in, and I gotta get rid of all these screws. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a grinder and zip off all these screws. I'll deal with the bends later. That's to put the fender in. All right, so here's where we're at. There was a big skip in time in the video. This is about 2 weeks later from when I was filming it. I had a lot of issues and things came up, so stuff with this, stuff with other things. This thing wouldn't run. Now we're back. I did cut these out with a torch off camera, and I cut that toolbox off. But that's the only thing that happened off camera. So now that we have a 2-inch hole cut in here, because the pipes are 2-inch ID, inside diameter. So I went and got some 2-inch pipe with threads on it and pipe caps. But I didn't pay attention, and I bought 2-inch ID, which is inside diameter. So this comes out the same size as my rubber hose. But I'd already bought these. I already had cut this one up and changed it before I realized that. So I got these, which is 1.5" OD, outside diameter. And they almost fit in here, just a little bit of slop, but they'll fit in my rubber hose. If I would have paid attention, I would have bought the 2.5" OD first and just made the whole thing out of 2.5" OD. And one reason I couldn't swap to this is because I already cut my 2-inch holes out, which I could fill and stuff, but it's just easier to use this, what I already have. So I bought these to weld inside, and here's my caps. But my angle, I gotta have an angle on there so I can go from this angle, it's on, straight to the hose, which is pretty much straight across. You look in here, it can only drop down a tiny bit. This one gives you a better look because there has a hose, the original. Comes down way too far, so then it doesn't fill and it overflows before it fills my tank. So here's the kind of filler neck we're making. We're making it out of pipe. A thing on getting hoses: you can go to a truck place like Kenworth or Peterbilt or something, maybe Caterpillar, and you could probably get 2-inch turbo boots and radiator boots to use for extra tubing if you need tubing. I've had a hard time finding 2-inch even at hardware stores. So first I went to O'Reilly's and I'm getting this. It was more than I wanted to spend. It was like 60 bucks. But the only thing they had, a radiator hose, a generic one that came out at 2 inches. So I got that, then I decided to go to AutoZone, and I think I got this one for 20 bucks. But just go to a parts store, ask to go in the back and look at the radiator hoses, and glance around until you see a 2-inch radiator hose that might work if you can't find just rubber 2-inch hose. Or if I didn't have the option of going to a truck stop at the moment, or a truck shop, but there you could probably find turbo booting hose or radiator hose there that would work. But since I only had parts stores I could go to, they didn't carry 2-inch rubber hose, I just got a 2-inch radiator hose. So I was going to cut this in half and use it on either side, but I had fuel issues and I ended up pulling the pump out of this thing, out of this trailer, and I realized I have some hose here that might work. So I might just return both those. But I'm gonna show you guys how to make what I got going on right here with my angle in there. Pull the cap off, I'll show you guys how it'll look. So it'll sit in here like this, and it'll look about like that. I wanna whack those off. That's where someone used to have the fuel tanks coming from on this bed once upon a time. They had a big toolbox here and their filler necks were in their toolbox. But, explaining before I get started on this, I think I threw it in here. There's a spider. Aha. Piece of paper. You don't have to cut it in a circle. I cut it in a circle just because it's easier to fold when it's in a circle. I just laid a piece of paper on a plate on some construction paper, cut out a circle. You could use a square piece. I folded it in half. And say you want to make a 45 angle, or sorry, a 90, you need to cut out a 45 out of a piece of pipe to turn it into a 90. So you fold this paper in half once, in half twice, and that's a quarter of a circle, which would be a 45 cut. So you'd put it straight down, and you'd make your cut, trace it out, bend that over, and it'd give you a 45.
Well, I needed an 1/8, so I folded it down, and I wanted it right at the threads. So I traced that out, flipped it over, and traced it on the other side, and then cut my lines out. And that gave me the correct bend for this. Just because I didn't have anything to do with that, so it works. It's probably a little simple and a little dumb, but hey, it works. If that's what you got, that's what you got. So I'm gonna go ahead and trace my line out on here, cut this out, bend it, weld it, and I'm also gonna put this in here. But this is a little too small, and I wanted to get it centered in there for welding. So what I did was I put a couple tacks around it to take up the slack, then put it in there and welded it. And you could even get your tacks a little big off of here and let them rest on the lips if you wanted. But that's what we're gonna do. Enough talking, I'll get into it. You can just watch the process now that I explained it. All right, so I got it cut. I much rather would have done it on a bandsaw because I could have just cut one side, laid it on there, and just run it on the bandsaw one way or run it on the bandsaw the other way, and I'd have a perfect cut. That's not bad at all there, but would have been easier and quicker. So I'm gonna screw the cap on. Well, as you can see, I ended up with some not the best looking holes. It'd be easiest just to cut both sides here and slam it the other way. The problem I ended up with the holes is because I didn't get my corners brought down close enough when I drew them on there. So I could either bend it out or I could cut the section out and make it closer. But MIG welding them holes ain't gonna be bad to fill at all. My welder doesn't work quite right, so my welds look a little sloppy because my lead's messed up, so the wire catches in it. So I have it adjusted for what it shouldn't be, and most of the time it has enough resistance, it runs right. But sometimes then it will run too fast, sometimes it will run too slow. So, yeah. And I should clean up my welds always, but I don't. But we're gonna go ahead and just weld this up all around. We're gonna put some tacks on this, drop it in, weld it up, and call it good. Oh, and always make sure to leave the cap on when you weld, if you weld something like this, so you don't get any slag on your threads. And then you're gonna have a hard time getting it off because it's gonna be all heated up and expanded, but it's doable. So let's get to it. Well, here it is built, and of course my welder was working great, and of course you probably saw how I was just holding the ground on there with my hands. Is that a hole? No, just a shadow, not a hole. That's a shadow from a piece of slag on it. But I don't think there's any holes in my welds. It just looks trashy. But I got a not good lead, and that's what I'm stuck with for today. And until I decide to go buy a new one, which is probably never. So I'll let that cool off. It's steaming. I'll let it cool off. Then I'll throw it in here, weld them up, attach the fuel necks, and it'll be done. I'm gonna go ahead before I get these fuel necks in and weld the border around these, and then I'm gonna put the fuel necks in, and I'll probably just do 2 or 3 spots on them just to hold them in place and probably leave them like that. Alright, so I have them in here. You can see I tried to weld here, but it turned out really nasty. I tried to clean it. I had a wire cup right there. This wire cup is almost gone, or is gone basically. And couldn't get ever cleaned. My cord was having a lot of trouble. And out here my gas was blowing. So it just wasn't turning out well. I don't have a stick welder at my disposal at the moment. So I quit that because I want it to look nice, and I'll just stick weld it sometime. And I kind of tacked these in here, but you can see it wasn't going well. So later on I'm going to cut into those a bit, and I'm going to stick weld around this and sticker weld around the sides and make it look good. So next thing to do, here's my bottoms. That one's cocked up a hair. I wish I wouldn't have turned it out like that, but it is what it is at the moment. So I'm gonna go ahead and see what I can do about rubber hoses, get it all hooked up and working. Well, there's how they look. They don't have the clean welds on them yet. There's the hose on this side. This is out of that gas tank I showed you. There was a big end on that end, which fit on that pipe, but for some reason a lot of gas tank hoses are form fitted to where they have bigger ends and smaller middles, and this is like that, and I had to cut the end off so I had a smaller middle. So I split it and I shoved it on here, and the split grew as I shoved it on here. I think it will still seal. If not, I'll just throw another hose on here. I'll chop up that radiator hose and throw it on here if that doesn't seal. But this is basically the idea. And there's how it looks. Doesn't look too awful bad. Alright guys, so here's the finished product. It's not the prettiest. It could use some work, but as always, I just don't have time. So it'll probably stay like this for a long time, but it looks a lot better than it did in the video a minute ago, but it's been like 2-3 weeks down the road, maybe probably longer. But here's where I'm at. You can see that actually looks worse on camera than it actually is. Maybe you can see there. I have a couple little holes, but I just don't have a very good sanding pad right now. And for me, it'll work this way for now. See, I got a couple holes up there. It's real thin. I really just need to run a real hot bead around everything. But at the moment, I'm just not worried about it. But there's how it looks. If I wanted to paint it, I mean, it's structurally sound. I could put Bondo on it and paint it. I could run a real hot bead and grind that all down, but that'll add a lot of time. I just don't want to do it at the moment. And I added airbags too. But there's what they look like. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. And once again, all the support is always appreciated. So thank you guys very much. And we'll see you on the next one where I know I have some videos I haven't finished filming. And I might put some tubs in the back of this for welding. So who knows? But catch you on the next one.